the main problem is not doing something, it's deciding what to do and that you want to do it. She said, once you've decided that you want to do it, all you have to do is do it.
You're listening to Art Heroes Podcast, the show to help you thrive as a digital artist. Tune in to learn how to transform your passion into a career. Get inspired by other kick-ass 2D and 3D artists, and find out what it takes to be an art hero.
Lee, welcome to Art Heroes Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's really nice to be here.
Yes, I'm really happy that though you made it. And honestly, I'm honored because as I was just telling you, we've never had anyone from, like your specific side of the industry and anyone who's running a digital art gallery. And so I'm really excited to know everything about it. Actually, can we start with a little bit of your story? Like how you got into digital art and where did you start from with what was in the beginning?
Well, I studied art, fine art at university, but then I went on to, I was kind of a curator, really. I realized I wasn't as good at making art as I was at organizing other people to put art shows together. So that's kind of how it started out. And then I ended up working with the Tate. So I was working on projects, big projects for them, like the Turner Prizes, and working with the collection. So a lot of it was dealing with the artist directly, which was great and very inspiring. It was all my heroes, really. I worked on Susan Hiller's show and worked with Tacit Adine on a big, she works
amazing.
A big project with her. And then I went into the commercial sector. So I was a gallery director in London for a number of years.
And how did this trajectory ramped up to the digital part of it? That's, that's seems almost as interesting because how traditional links with digital.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always been quite tech savvy, and the art world is incredibly untechnical. It's very physical. It's very much about sitting down with people in rooms. And I was always very much thinking that, the internet and digital art was really a way to reach more people. And when I was at the Tate, I was working mainly with their digital collection as well. So it was always on my mind. I think the technology took a bit of a time to catch up, and also people's mentality around it, took a while to catch up, because I think people really have struggles when it comes to thinking about how to experience artworks and art experiences in the digital realm. And I've always been a great advocate of that because it's just got kind of much more, it's an infinite availability. And then we ended up with Voma, which is where I'm kind of sitting now.
Exactly. And so here we go. How would you normally describe Voma to people who have no idea what is digital art and digital art galleries?
Sure. Well, Voma, which stands for the Virtual Online Museum of Art, is the world's first, and as far as I can tell, only completely virtual art museum. So the idea was not to create digital art gallery, but rather a space that people could go to see works that exist in the real world. So we curate a series of a program of exhibitions of artwork from across history. So you've got works from old masters all the way up to contemporary artists who might not have been seen very widely. So it gave us this amazing opportunity to give access to the art world in a way that had never been there before. So we created it in a game engine, so it's absolutely stunning. And at the moment we've got 3 exhibitions, an artist display, and various other things going on in there, which includes, like I say, works from across history. I think the oldest thing we've got in there is a mosaic from the 2nd century BC, right up to a brand new commissioned artwork, which is a digital piece created by an artist called Melvin Gallopon.
Wow. So when was the Voma born, and like how many people are like working on it? Like what's the, how many people are behind the project? I mean, it
Yeah, it's
seems
an interesting
huge.
one. It was conceived by Stuart Semple, who's an artist, and he really goes back to the very beginnings of the internet. He was selling art online before that was a thing, back in 2002. So he's been very much in this space for a very long time, and he's a social activist really, and he's always been very much about um, giving access to as many people as possible to the world of art. And he and I met a number of years ago when I curated him in a show, and I think we realised that we've got a lot of similar ideas. So I think it was when the technology really kind of came to the point where you could do it. So the core crew is pretty small. I mean, I'm currently curating the shows. We get in guest curators as well. We've got the technical team who are building the thing and hanging the show, hanging in inverted commas, the shows. So they're kind of creating
Yeah.
the artworks to go in the shows. And then we've got a couple of web people, a couple of marketing people, and PR and things. It goes up and down, because in moments of high demand, like right now, we're about to put on new shows at the end of the month. So that's going to be they launch, I think, at the start of August, and they'll run for 3 months. So at the moment, we're at kind of high energy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And the rest of the time, it kind of shifts to the talks program and the education program, and that it takes on different staff. But the wonderful thing about running a digital online gallery is you don't need an enormous number of people to make amazing things happen.
Wow. So how has your space changed with I know you get asked this all the time, at least I can guess you get asked this all the time. With the rise of NFTs, has it affected you at all?
Well, I think the whole digital space has transformed for the arts over the pandemic because
Definitely.
it was suddenly absolutely necessary for all these completely Luddite, technophobic gallerists to suddenly start showing work online because their galleries were closed. So suddenly, like in a month, it just went whoop and just
Mhm.
flipped from nobody doing it to everyone having to do it. So we had a lot. It was good timing, really, because we were developing Voma and we were having all these conversations already. With things like NFTs, we were kind of looking at it. Really important to remain engaged with these things. I'm always on Clubhouse in these conversations with NFT artists, and just a lot of it is giving advice actually, because the problem with having no kind of regulation or central kind of curatorial experience is that a lot of people they don't have any experience of the art market, so they're thinking that they're completely free within this when actually they're not. They're still commanded by market forces, and that can always hurt artists as much as help them.
So you think it's related? Like you think there are parallels that we can build in between like physical art and how it's being used, distributed, stored, and digital art, with like within the context of NFTs, that like artists, I would say, need to answer similar questions as of like um, appreciation of their work and how they show it and all of this. You think there are any similarities in this sense?
I think there's always a space for a kind of a curated and guided experience. I think it can feel like a swarm.
Right.
This is the problem. When I first got into NFTs, like about a year ago, I'd kind of stick my head into the websites, and it would just feel like sticking your head into a bee's nest. It was just too much, and it was unfocused, and it was everywhere. And it felt like what it needed was a bit of kind of focus and a bit of guidance. And I think that's the same for any art space.
How do you guys with Voma make this experience for people to last? Because it might seem even way too easy to get access to digital art because it's just like everywhere. I mean, it's blinking and it's rotating and it's time lapsing and it does all these things, and you almost can find it almost everywhere. So, how do you make sure that this experience for Voma visitors is different,
Mm.
or that they get something different out of it rather than just I don't know, like screen scrolling and
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a thought experiment, Voma, and it still is. But I think something that we found very early on was that people are navigating the way people are navigating is really telling, because we've got all this data, because we've got all the analytics, we know exactly how people are behaving, and you because I there's a pop-up map, right? Because I was
Yeah.
thinking everyone's going to be too lazy, they're just going to want to jump around, right? So there's a map with all these different points that you can jump to. People don't do that. They walk through the gallery and they go from point to point to point to point to point.
Yes, that's what I did. I do this all the time.
Isn't it lovely?
I didn't even care about the map, but like seriously, every time I started from the very beginning, and we're gonna drop the link in the show notes and under the video description. Guys, if you have not yet looked at the website, please do so that you understand why, because it's just like such an experience.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was really valuable, and it shows that people have a craving for that kind of physical exploration. And the way that you come across the works, they are photorealistically 3D rendered images of famous artworks and new artworks, like I said. So when you walk in, you've got a surah in front of you, and it's a stupendously high resolution surah, which you can go right up to. And this is another thing you can't do in museums. You can literally stick your nose right up against these artworks.
And so, what happens with I know you mentioned just like 5 minutes back, like workshops and educational programs and things like that. Can you tell me more about like all the other activities that run around museum ecosystem? Like wouldn't even expect that there is something on top. Well, I mean, of course I know, but typically when I would hear something like, "Well, there is a virtual museum," I would expect, like a gallery. But yeah, what's with the program then?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to the guys at Outset. I don't know if you know them, but they're a major organization that works with museums all over the place. And they were saying that they were surprised that we'd done that, because they're trying to get away from what they see as the weight of the museum model. They think that that's holding them back. But what we're doing is, using Voma as a real museum. So yeah, so we have a talks program. We generally do artist interviews, panel discussions. We're actually holding a conference at Voma in November about art and innovation, but particularly with a focus on climate change. Yeah, so we've got all sorts of stuff. The education program is nascent, actually. I think by the time this podcast goes out, we'll have some stuff to say for that. I run an art and education charity as well called the 16 Trust, and that's to do with kind of getting people from poor economic backgrounds into the arts. So they're kind of teaming up, these two kind of hats that I'm wearing, because we've created another gallery, a 3D gallery, for young people to make their own shows. So that's going to be part of.
Nice.
We just worked with a school in New York. We're working with a number of schools in the UK and Switzerland as well.
Wow.
So it's potentially global, which is really exciting. And I think the idea of having a virtual education program for a museum is something that it's definitely never been done.
Yes, of course.
So again, it's like the world is our oyster. We can kind of just create that in a way that is
Absolutely. I'm actually really curious about this, the aspect of globalization and how I don't know, like how do you see the role of virtual galleries in democratizing art, or vice versa, selecting it? Because like traditionally museums have been like seen as too selective for artists, and there's always been this almost unreachable barrier. So how do you see Voma here? Is it I know it's all curated, so how like how you guys are dealing with this in general?
I think it's a really good question, and it's really core to what we're trying to do. I think the the access that we're talking about is not just access for audiences, but it's access to artists, for
Exactly.
artists to get their work out there as well. So it's a two-way street with Voma. There is actually a whole wall there called the Discoveries Wall, where there's a little chat box in the corner, and it says, look, if you've got any suggestions of works that we might have missed or work that I might have not have seen, then send it over and we'll get it up on the Discoveries Wall. So that's one thing. But it's also, we're trying to decentralize the art world in a way, because it is still very much, LA, New York, London, Paris,
Yes.
Hong Kong. That's really it, which misses out quite a lot of the rest of the planet.
Which probably misses out another like 195 countries.
Yeah, exactly, which is nuts. And the thing is, because you can tell from my voice, I'm a white middle class English man who, this is basically what most curators look like. And we do tend to hear the same stories retold again and again because of that. And that's because of my background and my education. It's limited by the way that I was taught, and I'm aware of that, and I'm trying to be as aware of that as possible. So the way that we're doing it is, my kind of approach to curating is really a collaborative one with the artists. So, for instance, in the first show we had the Manet's Olympia, which is this amazing painting of this woman who's
Yeah.
in the 1860s, and she's looking down on you. So it was a very empowered woman in those days, and it was quite controversial. But in the background, there's this black serving girl who's not mentioned in any of the histories. And so I thought, well, who's she? What about her story? So I asked an artist, a Nigerian artist called Abe Odedina, to basically create a room in conversation with Manet's Olympia, and particularly about the girl in the background. So that's kind of what we do, is trying to find new angles, new ways of talking about art. Also, the reach of Voma is global, because basically everyone's got a phone. So they're all 50% of all people look at it and visit on a mobile. And we've seen now, I think we've reached about 65 countries. And because it's got a kind of a virality, because people just tell each other about it. There's a lot of word of mouth, and there's a lot of tweeting going on in different languages. So we've seen like these massive spikes. So like a few weeks ago, there were 1,000 people a day coming in from Korea. From
Wow.
South.
What happened?
I don't know. That was nothing to do with us. Museums can seem mysterious and unattainable to artists and to visitors alike. And what we're trying to do is break down those barriers a bit.
Do you see that there is a difference in between like likable art, in terms of art that makes it real big in social, and art that is museum material? And like how would you define this difference, if there is any?
That's really interesting. I think what's interesting here is we're talking about the difference between the art market and museums. I think there is a relationship between the two, between the market and museums, and I think it's to do with who's buying the work. And I think the way that the market is working at the moment is much more online. They go straight to the artist, and they've got Instagram, and they've got these really useful online platforms. So I think things are going to change in the future. And I think museums have taken such a hit over the pandemic. They've really got to work out their PR and get involved with what people are interested in and why, and actually start asking questions of the public as well. I think there has been this kind of onus on museums to be the representatives of culture, and that's not necessarily okay on its own. They need help with that. And I think this digital revolution has really showed that, and it's really kind of flagged that up. So I think museums are trying, which is really nice. They're really trying to get their heads around this. And I think maybe that will lead to more openness as well.
So do you think in the future it's going to be easier for an artist, like contemporary artist, to make it to a museum, or the barriers will still persist because we're talking about much more volume?
I don't, I don't know really. I think even the Tate, like Maria Balshaw, who's the director at Tate now.
How a young artist can make it to Voma?
Sure, yeah. I think what's interesting about it is very diverse. I mean, the first show we had a 25-year-old artist from Africa alongside you
Wow.
some, like the Sura and the Hieronymus Bosch and Gilbert and George. I think it's really to do with with the way that things go into Voma is it kind of feels like it needs to be there needs to be a reason for it to be in Voma.
Right.
Um, I think it is a space for experimentation. We showed Misha Milovanovich's sculpture. Now that's this great. It's a physical thing, but she designed it in a computer. So I said, Misha, can I borrow your sculpture? And so she emailed me the model, and
Wow.
voila, we had a 6 meter high steel sculpture outside Voma. And she's not showed in a museum before, I don't think. And it's really about trying to get really good quality artists that haven't had the opportunity to show in such a wide public space before and get them curated into these shows alongside known names so that it kind of raises their platform a little bit.
Wow. I never thought of this as of like the form of art social elevator that, like the acknowledged artists are like elevating and, giving a hand to the younger ones.
Yeah, I think that's what the world should be about, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, of
You've got the
course.
opportunity to platform a younger artist, because we're always going to look to the next generation. It's funny because you see Damien Hirst getting all these major museum shows, and personally, I don't think he's done anything interesting since that shark, but he keeps getting shows because everyone knows him. So in that case, why not? If you put a really major artist next to another artist, walking into the room, you don't see them as separate. You don't see the
No,
hierarchy.
absolutely not. Yeah.
And I think we need to start thinking about these hierarchies and questioning them because they're holding us back and they're holding back the museum programs. I think we all love Andy Warhol, but we've seen about 700 shows, thanks. So it's like, what about everyone else? Give a bit of wall space to the new people, the new generation. But again, that's to do with getting new voices in,
Yeah.
to helping new voices into making these decisions.
Wow. That's really interesting. And these new voices, as diverse as they can be in the future, because we can control that. I mean, our generation kind of like that definitely also opens more opportunities, not only to curators, but obviously to artists and like to overall community.
So what I'm hoping to do is get curators from all over the world, which is basically just friends of mine. So we've got people in MoMA, we've got people at the Pompidou in Paris, we've got people from Tate, obviously, K11 in Hong Kong, to basically come and guide students through this curatorial program that we've got with this virtual gallery.
Yeah.
We can do that. That's not a big deal for these curators. They'd love to do it. They'd love to get involved, and a lot of them really understand the problem of there not being enough diversity. So that's what we're working on at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm also really curious to see what happens with your charity program, because that sounds like an amazing adventure, and also, like an amazing opportunity for all the younger, like the youngest probably artists that we have right now,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
overall. So
exactly.
that sounds really interesting.
They were all young once, and I think the tagline of the charity, it's called the 16 Trust, by the way, the16.org. The tagline is, if they can see it, they can be it, and that's really very much
Nice.
what it's about. It's to do with kind of just showing people what's possible and then seeing what they do with it.
Wow. I think that is really, really powerful. And before I let you go, we've got a little tradition on the podcast.
Uh-huh.
I've got 10 questions for you, and you're allowed like a couple of words
Oh, fun.
for each. Ready?
Yeah. Okay, go.
Let's go. Number one tip for combating distractions when working from home.
Take multiple breaks. I always have
Pomodoro.
fun little things to do.
Awesome. Like what?
Oh, it can be anything. Like, there's always that smudge on the window that's kind of bothering you. So it can be something as simple as that. Just get up and clean the smudge off. Yeah.
Great. Your favorite tradition or holiday?
Or holiday. Anything that involves eating an awful lot of food.
Like, obviously, being as Italian as you are.
Yeah, anything. I mean, I'll take anything.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite way to get in some exercise?
I do kung fu, so that.
And you're not a panda as you're doing that.
No.
Okay, some real stuff. Okay, no joking. Like, yeah. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a number of years. So I'm learning new flying kicks at the moment, which is really good fun.
Amazing. Wow. I can only imagine that as a break in between Zoom calls,
That's another way to avoid distractions. Just go out.
Almost better than cleaning the smudge on the window. Yeah. All right. What's your most used emoji?
The rocket.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. I think it was probably a film director back in the day when I used to work on feature films, and she'd been working on this film for 4 years, and I said that's ridiculous. It's like an enormous amount of dedication. And she said, well, the main problem is not doing something, it's deciding what to do and that you want to do it. She said, once you've decided that you want to do it, all you have to do is do it. So I think that's a really brilliant piece of advice. That was 20 odd years ago, and I still keep that one close. That's because I think it's true.
Wow, that is so cool. That is so cool. Love that. How do you celebrate little victories?
Little victories. Probably do a little dance, actually. Little victories, yeah.
Okay.
Ruby, yeah.
Or a little flying kick and
yeah.
Great. Yeah, sounds great. If you could see one movie again for the first time, which one would you watch?
Oh, wow. Probably, the first one that sprung to mind is 2001 Space Odyssey.
That's it. We've got it. We've got it. Yes. I'm sure that many understand why. Those who watched understand why. Those who didn't just put it on the list. Perfect.
Casablanca. I love Casablanca, but I'd love to see it for the first time again.
Yeah. Awesome. And finally, what's your backup career?
Backup career. Well, I always thought that as an alternate career, I could be a vintner because I trained as a wine merchant back in the day, so I could do that. And I have been looking at vineyards, but I think that's more kind of retirement planning.
Well, since now we all live very long, we have space for more than one career and, more than one of everything. So having a backup plan never hurts. Amazing. Lee, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all the insights. It's been super interesting. It's I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure that people that are listening to this have also been, taking notes, especially all the young artists that still have a couple of lifetimes ahead. So there is space for career and one more.
Been really, really fun. And, anyone check out Voma and hit me up if you've got any kind of questions or anything. I'm very open to all of that.
Perfect. We're putting all the links in the show notes. So guys, if you're listening to this in audio format, check out the show notes. And if you're watching this in the video, just below this video, there is a link to Voma, and we're putting up on the screen. So just check it out and take a couple of walks. I'm sure you'll understand why we also love it. Again, thank you so much, Lee, and looking forward to catching up with you at some point later to see a few updates on how Voma's doing.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks so much. Huge pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Art Heroes Podcast. Check out www.artheroes.co for show notes, more interviews, and free tools made for you by our team of mentors. Tune in next week for more inspiration, and keep up the great work, hero.